This is our last calculator video. This is the correlation on the calculator. And this is, as we went over in class, this is for anybody that missed that. The very first time you use your calculator, one time only, you hit second 0, and that is the number 0 to access the catalog. So second 0. And then you scroll down until your arrow's pointing to diagnostic on. And you hit enter twice. So I'm going to scroll down. We're going to pretend my calculator's never had this done before. Put the cursor in front of diagnostic on, press enter 2 times. Now you hit stat. So here we are at the edit screen. You're going to hit enter because edit the data is exactly what we want to do. We have data in list 1 and list 2. I'm going to remove that data by hitting the delete key repeatedly. You probably have seen in one of the other sets of instructions that you can clear a whole list all at one time, but as I told you in class, I've had people that actually wiped out the list doing that because they didn't realize that they should hit the right key sequence. So I'm going to teach you, rather than have that happen to you, just to put your cursor on the top data value in the list and just keep hitting delete. It erases the board just fine. So now in list 1, we're going to type our data for X. And our data is going to be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to hit our Y values, and we're going to put them in list 2. So we move the right arrow button, moves us to the top of list 2, and we're going to enter the numbers that we see here at the top of the screen now. 5.3, 4.5, 9.1, 17.5, and 18. When we finish that, we're going to hit second Y equals. So second and Y equals. This is going to take you to the stats plots. Notice that a couple of ours are on. That's okay, because we're going to turn all of those off. So we're going to choose plot 1. It is turned on, unlike the one that was on the calculator used here. So our plot 1 is on, but we have the wrong type of data plot selected. So we're going to have to go down here and choose the scatter plot. So we've got the plot turned on. And by default, the scatter plot was selected, but we don't have it selected any longer, so we're going to press enter. So now we have the stat plot entered. And notice that when you do that, you'll always have an X list and a Y list. Now, list 1 and list 2 are again located above the numbers 1 and 2. So you hit second 1 and second 2 if you needed to change those, but ours don't need to be changed. So we're just going to hit enter to choose that plot, and then everything else is just fine. So what we're going to do now is use the zoom menu, and again we're going to hit zoom number 9 to get the best viewing window. So zoom and the number 9. Now, I still see a box plot, And that's because on the window that I was using before, the box plot was turned on. This is going to happen to you, so I want to show you how you get out of this. This is why, if you remember, I said always press your Y equals before you ever start doing a problem. And be sure that none of the plots are on. Now, we want plot 1 to be on, but plot 2 is still turned on, and we want that plot turned off. So we press enter to turn it off. And now, if we hit zoom and the number 9 key again, we will see the picture that we actually see here. So it's not trying to fit the window to both of those sets of data. It's only trying to fit it to the one set of data that we're graphing, list 1 and list 2, in a stat plot. Now, when you look at that I could draw a line through that if you think about it. It would work, but it's not connect the dots straight. It's just that they're fairly close to a line that runs kind of that way. Now, what we want to know is what is the value of R. And we'll talk about what R is in class a little bit, but essentially, R tells you how strong the relationship is between the data in list 1 and the data in list 2. If it's a linear relationship, only if it's a linear relationship. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually calculate the value of R and see how close it is to either 1 or -1. So we're going to press the stat button, and we're going to go over to the calc menu. Only this time we're not doing one var stats, we're doing linear regression. So go down to number 4. So you want to use the blue arrow key to go over to calc, and then we want option 4, linear regression. So option 4, hit enter. And since our data is in list 1 and list 2, you can just hit enter 2 times. Now, if your data wasn't in list 1 and list 2, you can't do that. But our data is, in fact, in list 1 and list 2. So all we need to do is hit enter 2 times. And when that happens, we see that the value of R is 0.93. That's the last number that's displayed. You list that value to 2 decimal places. And you see how close that value is to either +1 or -1, because both of those are what are called the maximum correlation coefficients. The difference is that the correlation we see here is positive, which means that as X went up, Y also went up. If as X went up, Y went down, then we would have a correlation that would be closer to -1. Now, we're going to start over. So we're going to go back to stat. We're going to choose edit. And what we're going to do is wipe out the data in list 2. Ignore the up arrow till the cursor's on there. We're going to do it the same way we did before. Always hit just delete, 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 delete. You won't have such a large data set that you can't do it that way. And we're going to change those numbers in list 2. So we're going to type new data in list 2. Now the new data, we're going to start with 1 corresponds to 19, 2 corresponds to 11.2, 3 corresponds to 10, 4 corresponds to 6.2, and 5 corresponds to 7. Now notice the difference in what we see here. Before, as list 1 went up in value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, list 2 also went up the last time. This time we start with a large number in list 2, and it slowly goes down. So what we expect to see here, since list 1 is going up and list 2 is going down, we expect to see a negative correlation. So again, we're going to hit zoom and the number 9 key because the same plot is already turned on. And we see that indeed the dots do tend to fall as you move across the screen from left to right. But they do still seem to fall in a somewhat linear pattern. Now, in order to determine whether or not that is a strong correlation, again, we're going to hit Stat, right arrow to Calc, and go down to number 4 and hit enter twice. And notice that the correlation is in fact negative. It is negative 0.90, which is pretty close to -1, so that means there's a strong correlation once again.